My name is Isha Gupta. I'm a senior at Gunn, as Advait said. And I want to start out with a story. So last year, February 2016, I was in class and I was talking to a few of my friends, and it was the time of the election. At this point in time, we had Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders. They were both presidential candidates for the Democratic Party, and on the Republican ticket, you had Donald Trump leading. We were talking about the merits and the costs of their policies. We were talking about who's going to win. When all of a sudden, one of my other classmates, from the corner of my eye, I heard them talking, and they were saying something along the lines of, "Why should I even care? I don't care about politics. This presidential election is stupid." And, you know, they had a fair point. I mean, we often look at presidential politics, we look at Washington, and it's so removed from us here in Palo Alto, and especially us high schoolers who are young and don't really see the need to get involved this early. But there's also a definition for this sort of feeling, and it's not just specific to young people. I think there's a general feeling of this throughout the country, and that's called political apathy. And that's defined as a person having indifference towards the political activities of their country. And Harvard University did a study on this in 2013, and they polled millennials. So the millennial generation can often be defined as 18 to 29-year-olds. And the first question they asked is, do you think the country is going in the wrong direction? And now I'm going to ask you guys, raise your hands if you think the country is going in the wrong direction right now. Okay, wow, that's a lot of you. So Harvard University did this survey, and they found that 86% of respondents thought that the country was going in the wrong direction. Furthermore, in the same study, they found that a majority of people would want to replace every single member of Congress. That's a lot. However, in the same exact study, they found that more than 1 in 4 people, so 26% of people, did not vote or weren't planning to vote in elections. And furthermore, 75% of the respondents said that they didn't feel politically active. So there's obviously a disconnect when we see young people saying that they're dissatisfied with the current state of politics, yet don't do anything to get involved. And that's the exact definition of political apathy. And when I think of political apathy, I think, well, why aren't we getting involved? After all, as young people, we're getting out of our parents' homes, we're going to college, maybe we're getting our own health insurance, buying our own cars. And so all of the policies of government and what government is doing actually directly impacts us. Maybe not just the presidency, but also policies taken at the state level and policies taken at the local level. And so it's really important that we try to get involved, and that's what I tried to do this summer. So also, another study that we saw, the US Census took this, and this is basically a graph where in the y-axis you can see that there are voting percentiles. So there are 3 different age groups you can see here. So the bottom little line over there are 18 to 24-year-olds. And so that's the trend of their voting patterns throughout the years. So if you see here, to, I think, your left, would be 1964, and the most recent year is 2012. And I think what really struck me with this graph taken by the US Census was that in 1964, the voting rate for 18 to 24-year-olds was 50.9%. So 50.9% of 18 to 26-year-olds voted. And now, it's only 38% of us. And we're not just talking about the presidential election, we're talking about state elections and local elections. And so clearly, even though we are dissatisfied with the current state of politics, we're not getting out there and voting, even though a large amount of us are eligible or will be eligible in a few years. So that's me. I was born here in Palo Alto, California, to 2 immigrant parents. They're both in the audience. My mother was from Sri Lanka. She came here after the Sri Lankan Civil War. And my father was from India, born to Indian immigrants from now Bangladesh, and they migrated to India after the partition in 1947. So I came from very, I guess you could say, humble immigrant backgrounds. My parents did not have any political connections whatsoever. We voted after they became citizens, of course. And we did not, the only political exposure I had growing up was kind of being interested in history and the world around me, and seeing, when I was very little, hearing about the Iraq War and the actions of George W. Bush. But really, no, we were not Kennedys, is what I'm trying to say. But I really had this interest in knowing the world around me. So in 7th grade, I joined Model United Nations, which basically encourages young people to speak about global issues, talk about different world events from the perspective of other countries. And then this summer, since the presidential election was going on, I actually took a job at the Hillary Clinton campaign. So I actually signed up, applied for a job, and indeed, after a phone interview, I got it, and started working at the Camden, San Jose office for Hillary Clinton. And with this job, I was working with a multitude of other young people, kind of calling people throughout California, getting them not just to vote for Hillary Clinton, but just also getting them out to vote. Because a large portion of voters, we found, especially in ethnic communities, especially in immigrant communities, were hesitant to vote. So we made phone calls and went out to doors and knocked on doors and mobilized people to vote. So that was basically our job in the Hillary Clinton campaign. And lo and behold, 2 weeks after I got my job, my campaign manager called me and said, "Hey, do you want to meet Hillary Clinton?" And this was in the middle of bio class, I remember. And of course I was like, "Yes, are you joking?" So we went out to Fresno, where she was speaking at a rally, and we got to meet her, which was really cool. And throughout the campaign, we worked phone calls, knocking on doors, monitoring the progress that we were having in California, and at this time, she was running against Bernie Sanders, so we were trying to have her win the California primary. And lo and behold, we did win the California primary by a larger than expected margin. And so I think what I took away from this experience was that even a high schooler from Gunn could really get involved in something bigger than myself and make an impact. And it wasn't just me, of course. There were several other people involved, and without those people, and I think without the multitude of people there were, it wouldn't have happened. And so this picture is with my friend Kristen talking to Hillary Clinton, and I do want to point this picture out because I think it really exemplifies kind of what I'm trying to get across. And Kristen, like me, she was born to immigrant parents. She went to Homestead High School, now she's in college. And she's talking to Hillary Clinton, who is one of the most powerful women in the world. And I think this picture kind of represents this exchange of ideas that can really happen between anybody about politics, about what needs to be done. Because again, while we were working on the Hillary Clinton campaign, while we agreed with a lot of her issues and the stances she took on certain issues, there were other policies we disagreed with. So it's really important when you're talking to your leaders, not only to express agreement, but also to express concerns and to have that sort of dialogue. And I think that's the sort of dialogue we really need now more than ever. And so I thought that Kristen really took advantage, and so did the rest of us, but she really took advantage of this opportunity to talk to her. So now, what can we do to solve the problem of political apathy? So there's something called political participation, and if you haven't already guessed by the name, political participation is when somebody gets involved in political activities in their country. So this can be as simple as getting educated on issues, maybe going online and searching up what stances your politicians or community leaders are taking on pertinent issues now, or it can be as powerful as voting. Because in the end of the day, nothing gets solved especially here in the United States, without voting. And a little bit of background, I used to live in Malaysia and India, and both countries are democracies in name. India happens to be one of the biggest democracies in the world. But both countries, when I was living there, and even though I was really young, there was always this sense of, well, you can't really do anything to solve this issue because you're just one citizen and government is corrupt. And you feel this sense of sort of that feeling here too, but I think what's really cool here in the United States is that we were founded on this principle of democracy. We were founded on the idea that even the most ordinary citizen from the most backward of backgrounds can really make a difference and really go out there and make a change in their community and in their government. And so one example of this that I saw very recently was the Women's March. And this was actually a picture that my friend Inger and I took when we were at the San Jose Women's March. And I think that's one example of political participation, because you had a bunch of women from all different backgrounds, all different genders and races and religions coming together to protest for a cause they really believed in. And so when you see kind of that sort of exchange of ideas and that sort of culmination of people, that's when you know that change can be solved. And so what can you do to help? And especially at this point in time when there is an administration right now that maybe not all of you agree with his policies, I know I don't, but I think what we can do, if you want to take action tomorrow or today, one thing is to call or contact your local representatives. It's really easy to send an email or go to an office of your congressman or your senator or your state senator, or call them or email them, and they are receptive. And what basically these state senators, and congressmen will do is that they'll look at all of the input that they have on a given day, and they are more emboldened to take action on an issue if they know that a large part of their constituency is really concerned about it. Because after all, a lot of our elected representatives at the end of the day care about getting reelected, but they can't get reelected unless their constituents are happy with what they're doing. So we as people in their constituencies need to basically get out and let our voices heard and get them to know what we're thinking. Also, volunteering at certain organizations. I was recently told that there's an app you can get on your phone called 5 Calls, and basically that will give you alerts on your phone to give it like certain actions that are taken every day, or certain calls that you can make to make an influence on different actions. So that's one way you can get involved as well. And also, the most important thing you can do, and I know not everybody in this audience is eligible to do this yet, but is to vote. That happens every 2 years with midterm elections, every 4 years with presidential elections. And here in the United States, we actually don't have a mandatory voting thing, which I'm not advocating for, because you can get fined if you don't vote in certain countries. But we do have this precious right that not all countries have. And the best thing we can do is to utilize that. So as soon as you're eligible, or if you're already registered to vote, that's great. But I know for some of you, you're not registered. If you go to your local DMV, or if you go online and search register to vote, you can register to vote and you will be eligible to vote. And those are kind of the things that you can do to get involved. And so I hope that you take from my talk today that it's really important to get involved, because if we don't, there are certain actions our government can take that we might not necessarily want. And it's our future, and actions and policies from our government influence us every single day. So that's all I have to say. Thank you so much.